We are here with Katia Jordan. She received her bachelor's degree from the illustrious Morgan State University, and her master's degree from University of Southern California in journalism. So thank you so much, Katia, for being here with us today. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited
Of
to be here.
of course, great. Yeah, so let's just get started. Tell us a little bit about your experience at Morgan.
So my experience at Morgan was probably like the best decision that I made because I actually didn't go there all 4 years. I transferred from a PWI, and those schools are good, but it was just a different experience to be around your people. And I was so just like entrenched with my tennis, because I was on the tennis team for all 4 years of my collegiate career. And so when I went to Morgan, I began diving more into storytelling. It started out in journalism, but eventually, after I graduated from Morgan, I went and did more storytelling and screenwriting and different mediums. So it kind of all started at Morgan. And like I said, the best decision that I ever made. It was just so much fun, and I learned a ton.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Um, so tell us a little bit about how have your journalism skills benefited you in the positions that you're in now?
Well, I feel like journalism is not that different from screenwriting. Obviously, it's a little different as far as like scripted and non-scripted, but as far as how you structure a story, I think they're very similar. Like in the very beginning, you need that meat of the story. You got to grab your audience. And I think that's very similar with writing. Like you're cold open, you got to like draw them in. So just knowing how to tell a story and how to do your research, like it's not a lot that's variant from screenwriting, because you have to do tons of research same way in journalism. So I would say researching the structure of the story, reaching out to people to understand what story you're trying to tell, and getting their perspective. I think those are very similar things from journalism and screenwriting.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, so tell us how you, I know you're saying that they're similar, but tell us how you made that transition from journalism to screenwriting, and how did you know, being a journalism major, how did you know that screenwriting was the next step for you?
So I went to USC for grad school, as you mentioned earlier, and I was doing journalism there, and I did entertainment journalism, and I was doing red carpets, and that was really cool, a great experience. I was on the red carpet with Oprah and got to ask her a question, and so many other red carpets as well. And it was good. I enjoyed it, but I just felt like I wasn't fully fulfilled. And so from that experience in the first semester, I was just like, what else can I do to try to fill this void? I didn't know how to fill it, but so I just kind of started exploring. And so I took classes in the film school at USC, and I was just like, okay. I think I may have stumbled across something that I really liked. And I found myself, even in journalism, kind of altering the stories a little bit. And I'm just like, it just would sound better if this person said this.
Mm.
I'm like, oh my God, let me stop. This is fake news. Um, so I'm just like, okay, yeah, maybe if I was in something that was more of a scripted arena, this would be a better fit for me.
Right.
And so I wind up after school, after I graduated, um, I was just like, okay, how can I get into screenwriting? And so I did a screenwriting course, like fellowship at Johns Hopkins with, I believe it's called BYFA.
Mhm.
And that's when, after I took a class there for screenwriting, that's when I just went like full force. It was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to tell stories. And I can tell it in my own perspective without worrying about like losing my job because I'm altering a quote or how the story or the structure is, because that's all about screenwriting. You create this world. And I think that's what I found most entertaining and fulfilling about, screenwriting.
That's awesome. I love it. It sounds like it makes sense that you stumbled upon it, because it just sounds like you have a passion for storytelling in general, and you've always had that, but it was about like identifying that. So I think that that's really valuable. Um, what is your day-to-day like as a script coordinator, and what was your day-to-day like as a writer's PA, and how are they related? How do you use those skills going forward?
Yeah, so I'll start out with my day-to-day as a writer's PA, and then I'll go into script coordinator. So my day-to-day as a writer's PA is, it was not that glamorous, but you learned a ton. A lot of the days you're doing a lot of the grunt work. It would start out with, making sure that everything is stocked with snacks, making sure the writers have the snacks, making sure everything looks clean on the desk and it's situated properly. And then after that, you may go into, the mornings are kind of actually a little slow, just a little bit, but you may do little things like a writer may say, okay, can you go get donuts or coffee, or can you mail this off? So it's a lot of like little things. But if you're not doing that, then you kind of just get to observe the room and what they're talking about. But let me just say that not all writers' rooms allow the writers' PAs to be in the room. I've actually known a lot of writers' PA who are outside the room. I was very fortunate to actually be in the room and listen to them break to the writer's break story and just go through the whole brainstorming process. But to go back to the day, so after the morning, you get all the coffee, you get that situation, and then it's lunch. That's a big deal. These writers love lunch. And it's just sometimes it's just like, oh my God, you love lunch a little too much, because if you mess something up, there's been writers just like, can you go get it the right order, the right way? Like, it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. So you have to have like a whole system for lunch. Like, you have to treat it very seriously. So I would get all the lunches, and they were at Dear White People. It was about 15, 16 people. So I'm getting like 16 different lunches and making sure it comes back on time. Like, it's a whole art to it. Like, you cannot downplay the lunch process. Like, I used to have whole spreadsheets on knowing, like, okay, the checklist when you get there to the restaurant, somebody has this, this, and this. So anyway, I say all that to say is like, they treat lunch very seriously. And if you mess up, they're all hangry and stuff. But after that, the day you pretty much, you're printing out scripts. Sometimes you're helping out at any capacity. And some, I got opportunities to pitch at sometimes. It wasn't like super frequent, but it did happen. So you just kind of have to be ready. So that's pretty much a writer's PA job. Just helping the writers in any form, and lunch is a lot of the responsibility, crazy enough. And then also you help with payroll and making sure everybody gets their checks and reimbursement money and stuff like that. So that's the writer's PA. That was my job for that. But as far as script coordinator, I'm so happy to have transitioned out of always preparing my day around lunch and whatnot. So the script coordinator's job now, because we're in COVID, I kind of just do a morning meeting with the writers, and it's about 3 writers. We do a morning meeting. I take notes, and after I'm done taking notes, I send them the notes. And then if we're sending out different scripts or whatever phase that we're in, whether it's outline, the D1, the D2, the polish, whatever, then I'm making sure that it goes out, the script goes out to everybody who needs it. And that's a lot of the executives. And so I'm in charge of making sure that the script is formatted properly, that it's being distributed to the correct people, and pretty much anything that's involving scripts, that's my job. So yeah, that kind of is the whole day for a script coordinator. Is not as regimented as a writer's PA. Like it's not the same thing every day. We're script coordinator. I would say like the last month I've been more of the writer's assistant. We're not quite in the production phase. And so I'm just taking notes, and like even with casting, when they're casting people, I have to make sure that the script is proper. And if I'm in animation, so if they're doing pickups for the records, basically just the records is somewhat kind of the auditions, and then also just the animation characters coming to life. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I help out with that. Right now it's a little bit slow, and I'm just strictly doing notes, and then that's about it. But yeah, so that's been my day to day so far for both positions.
How the job, I mean, you kind of hit on that actually. So what advice would you have about getting consistent work and keeping consistent work?
I would say you have to network as much as possible. That's always been the biggest thing for me. And I took a page from Yo Gotti's song and slid in the DMs.
Love it.
Because it does go down in the DMs, but do it professionally. And yeah, so I would reach out to tons of writers on Instagram, and you know, a lot of them actually got back to me, and then that's how I was able to develop my relationships in the industry. And we would, you know, start out with informational calls first, and then from there you just, you know, periodically check in with them and say, okay, I'm doing this right now. You know, sometimes you can be a little blunt and say, do you know about any other positions? But you do that, you kind of ask that when you know that the relationship has kind of developed. I wouldn't start out with asking for a job or if they know of any jobs.
Right.
But they always keep you in mind if you have that, you know, good rapport with them. And so that's kind of happened with me, where somebody knew of a job and then they let me know. And then that's how I got my writer's PA positions. I just going on a LinkedIn page, and it was like tons of people had already applied. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to shoot my shot. I doubt if I get it, but you know, if I tried, and look, I got it, and I was very surprised. Just because I've never really gotten any traction from LinkedIn, but you know, it works. So I would say the biggest thing is to always be networking, no matter if you're in the job or not. Like, it's just important to kind of do it all the time. That has to be very consistent, because relationships is like one of the biggest things about this industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we hear that advice all the time, but it's never something that is old or tired. It's always relevant, and it's always something that we need to be doing. So
Yeah.
it's great to always be reminded of that. So how do we reach out to those people appropriately? What advice do you have when it comes to the technicalities of networking?
Yeah, so I would say definitely do your research on the writer before you reach out to them. Um, you know, make sure that it's not just like a copy and paste statement that you put in everybody's, you know, email or DM or
Right.
whatever you message them on. Make sure it's kind of personalized. You know, for me, I would study every writer that I reached out to, but it's not like studying where it's just like, okay, let me watch every show that you're on. Not like that. Although I did do that if they reached back out to me. So if I talked to them, I would know like what shows they worked on, how they wrote, at least watch one episode of what they wrote. before you get in contact with them, or before you set up an informational. But I would just say, make sure that you know who you're talking to, and you can mention, like, I'm a big fan of the show that you wrote, or this particular episode. There's some people who don't really want to go down that road because they don't want to come off as fangirlish or boyish. But I do think, for me, when I wrote things and said, I'm a big fan of the episode that you wrote on Dear White People. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your artistry, or something. I mean, you don't have to go that far, but you just say, I appreciate your work. I would love to talk to you about getting into the writing industry and your experiences, and boom. It does not have to be long at all whatsoever. Kind of keep it short and sweet. And that's how I would go about that.
Awesome. Great. Love it.
Oh, and also make sure that you give just a little bit of background about yourself. Obviously, like, I think after I completed school, I just said I recently graduated from USC, and I'm looking to get into this industry. Just give like a really brief description about yourself. And especially if you just finished college, play up on that, because they always want to help students who recently just finished. So like, I'm a recent graduate, and then you go into the part of saying, I really enjoyed your episode on this show and would love to talk to you. Do you have, and make sure you say, like, I know you're busy. You don't have to start out with that, but I've done that before. I know you have a very busy schedule. If I could just take 20 minutes out of your day, or sometimes even 15, I would love that. So you can structure it something similar to that.
Cool. That's great. Love it. So what was it like when you first got into the room? The first room that you've ever stepped foot in, what was that like? And how were you able to pick up and learn different things? And because I'm sure, like, something that we deal with is there's only so much that you can learn sitting in a classroom, right? A lot of it is hands-on, and we learn when we get there. And that's just, it's a blessing and a curse. So tell us a little bit of what that was like for you.
Yeah, so my first room was it was kind of overwhelming, like that first week, because I literally had no idea like how things were structured. So I had to kind of observe and ask questions and know like which person to ask questions to, because like if you come in and you don't really know what's going on, do not ask the showrunner. Ask somebody who is like a little above you, or another assistant, or an assistant level. And sometimes there'll be showrunners who will reach out to you and actually say, this is what I want from you. I want you to do this, da, 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 da. But that doesn't really happen often. When I first started the PA job, nobody kind of really told me what my job was. It was kind of the day of, they're just like, okay, so you're going to get lunch? Okay, so you're going to do this? Okay, this? And it's just like, oh, okay. So I would say reach out to other PAs before you start out, and they can give you kind of a blueprint of what to do. And obviously you will get some direction. It's not like they're just expecting you to do everything, but you may not get as much direction as you think, because even with getting a writer's PA job, it's very informal. Like, it's not like I interviewed for them. It was just like I knew the right person, and they're like, okay, you got the job, come tomorrow, something like that. And it's not like in an interview they say, okay, we expect you to do this, this, and this, and this. So I would say the best thing to do is to make sure that you're observing, reach out to other PAs so they can kind of give you the land of the lay. And then from there, you get the hang of it. It took me about a couple of weeks to like truly get the hang of it. And then you just kind of go with that, and just observe as much as you can. and ask questions, but know who to ask the questions to.
Got it. Awesome. And so how did the room change when COVID hit? I hate asking COVID questions, but like I would like to know, how that shift was for you.
Yeah, well, it was very different. It was very different. So I was in the room with Dear White People when COVID hit, and it was just, we were kind of just like everybody, just kind of full of panic a little bit, and just didn't know what we were doing, what was going on. But it just immediately went to where we are now with Zoom, and at first it was a little different because, being a writer's PA, a lot of your duties are in the office. So
Right.
I really didn't have a lot to do at all besides like payroll, helping with that. So that was completely different. But as the script coordinator, I've never been in the office with them. I've never met them physically. Like everything is all through Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I kind of like it. But sometimes there are times where I feel like it's a little impersonal, because I think with Zoom, it's very business-like. And it's very like, okay, let's break story, let's this and this. But when you're in the room, like you have time, you have lunch, you have leisure time, and you're not always talking about story. But I feel like with Zoom, okay, once we're done breaking story, all right, see you later, bye. And that's it. So, now that's why I feel like it's a difference. It's a little harder to build the relationship up outside of just let's talking about the story. So that part I really do miss. But you just kind of have to make it work. And not all the times are you going to be talking about work, but if there is if you get on early, if you get on the Zoom call early and there's another writer, strike up a conversation. Talk about what you're working on. You just always have to find a way to network and to kind of just, I wouldn't say sell yourself, there's a lot, but
sell your soul to the writer's room.
I don't know, don't sell your soul or anything, but just to kind of show your personality outside of work a little more, outside of writing. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think now we can open the floor for questions from our participants. Does anybody have a question for Katia?
I guess I do.
Go ahead, Karen.
As far as like you said, getting out of college and you looked for different opportunities to work at different places, I wonder how long that took. And it's like, was there ever a time where you felt discouraged and was like, man, I'm like not really gonna get anywhere?
Yes, I felt that way. It took some time. It took time. I feel like it took like about 4-5 months to just get a position in LA. So I started out as an intern at a development company, as a development assistant intern, pretty much. And I just was like, oh my God, I can't get a job. And even that was unpaid. But just to get that, it took about 4 months. And then after the unpaid job, I'm like, I got to get paid. What am I supposed to do? And at this point, it's like I have my bachelor's degree and a master's degree, but I just couldn't find work. But I knew it had to be in the entertainment industry. And so in the meantime, I was actually a receptionist first, as that was like my first official job at a post house, and that was helping with the sound for different shows and helping with editing. And so it took a minute. Honestly, I feel like in order to get the writer's PA job, it took me about 8 months or something. So you have to be very patient. And I was discouraged a little bit. It was just like, I have, my degrees, and I'm a receptionist and stocking water. Not to say that I'm above stocking water, but it was just like, no, I want to be in the writer's room. But you know, you have to have also a good support system. And my parents are just like, you know what, it's okay, Katia, just be patient, just keep networking. And networking really was like my second job. So I would say you just have to kind of be patient and expect that this is the marathon, that it's going to be a marathon and not a sprint. So, you know, and in the meantime, just keep working on your samples and reaching out to as many people as you can. And then something will come. It will come, but you just have to be patient.
Okay, so
everything?
I'm with you.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So you spoke about that you had some opportunities to pitch your ideas. I wanted to ask you, what notes do you have on pitching your script to professionals?
Yes, so that can be a little tricky because you have to kind of do it with finesse, because there's some people who just feel like, you know, your assistant, don't come to me with your ideas. I really don't care. And you'll get that attitude. But then there's some people who are just like, okay, I'm welcoming you know, your opinion and your, you know, your creativity. But like I said, you gotta finesse it. You have to kind of develop rapport before you get into that level, into that space. And so there were times when I was on various shows and I would just, you know, in the morning before everything started, I would talk to the writers. And from then, you know, I think you naturally get into a conversation like, what are you working on? And I was like, oh, I'm working on this script. I'm pretty much done. And, you know, I'm just trying to tweak little things and figure things out. And then they're like, oh, really? Okay, send me your script. And then that's when you send it. You know, you don't necessarily stay like, can I send you my script? You just kind of let them say, oh, send me your script. And that's kind of how it worked out for me. As far as pitching on the show, again, they would kind of ask me for my opinion and then I would go in. Or you can also give your opinion or a pitch like when the room is over. Meaning like the day, not like the actual when it's totally wrapped. You can just kind of go on the side and say, you know what, I had this idea, you know, just wanted to throw it out there or whatever. But again, just make sure you do that when you feel like you've built up enough rapport.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Janae, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Hi, I'm
Hi.
Janae. So today was supposed to be my first day at this internship, but I can't go today. But they said they was gonna put me in a writer's room for this project.
Okay.
And I couldn't find anything about the project online. So I just wanted to know if you had any advice for someone who's going into the writer's room like totally blind, because I do want a job offer after this.
Right. And do you know what show it? So what show is it, or what company?
An animated show. It's called, I don't even know if I can talk about it. Like, it's called the Benny Blueprint, but it's for a company in Baltimore, an animation studio in Baltimore.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would say that my advice is to make sure that you know, you communicate with them, and like I said earlier, ask like exactly, you know, what do you expect of me? And I don't think I mentioned this early on, but literally every room is different. They're like, there may be a writer who wants you to, you know, have hole punched scripts, print them out with holes. And then there may be a writer who doesn't want that. So you do have to ask like specifically, what do they want? And I think early on, you can say that at the very beginning, like, you know, I've worked on certain shows where they wanted this from me, but I just want to know specifically, what do you want? What do you expect of me? And whoever hired you, I think you can ask those questions. You know, but as far as being in the writer's room, I didn't really start out as a writer's PA online with Zoom, so I don't really know how that makes things different and how to really do that. But I would say the best thing is to communicate and ask questions and observe as much as you can, take as many notes as you can. If you're in the writer's room, I will also suggest to take notes. Even there may be a writer's assistant there as well, but you take notes too, because you never know. Like, you may be able to, send your notes in and say, I just took backup notes. Or if the writer assistant is not there for the day, you take the notes. So you just have to find a way to kind of be noticeable, and so they know exactly what you can contribute to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, I have another question. So I wanted to know, how did you prepare to enter this industry? Did you just write a lot of scripts, or did you create any short films?
Yeah. So actually, I really didn't have anything when I came in, because I didn't really know about screenwriting. I just knew that I wanted to do it, but I didn't, like I said, I didn't go to school for it. And so I kind of just learned on the fly. And so I was in the writer's room. That's when I was just absorbing everything. And then I'm like, okay, so they have the 3-act structure, they have cold open this, da 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 da, and then they're gonna have an act break here. And that's where I learned. It was almost like grad school, really. And then after I kind of, learned all the basics, that's when I started writing my own scripts. And so, I didn't really have much besides my journalism work. So I just kind of learned on the fly. And then that's when I started, truly doing my own projects and work.
So in the writer's room, what notes have you picked up, or from analyzing how they communicate with each other, like how they communicate their thoughts and opinions to each other?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a hierarchy in the writer's room. And so you'll see like the showrunner is mainly the person who's, putting ideas out there from at the very beginning. So they'll kind of throw something out there, and then the writers will kind of feed off of that. As far as like how they communicate, the writers that I've worked with, is luckily it hasn't been like I'm the showrunner, so I'm only the one who's talking. It's a very collaborative experience, and so it can kind of be really casual too. It's just like, what, this happened to me and so, and I think that we can incorporate this story. And it's a lot of being in the room, you hear a lot of personal stories and a lot of things that you may not think would be brought up in a writer's room, but it takes a lot to actually get to the story. And it's even personal, like I said, personal stories. And, I'm just trying to think exactly how it is, because sometimes it's not that formal. It's just like regular communication, telling about your life. And then they're like, you know what, let's draw from here. Let's take that and then put it in the story. Da, da, da. So it kind of varies. Sometimes it's very informal, and sometimes it's like straight to business. Like, you know what, let's put this. And there's some writers who don't talk as often, and then there's some writers who do. But yeah, sometimes it's based off the hierarchy, and sometimes it's just writers who don't pitch a lot. But when they do pitch, you hear them. Like, it's just like they don't have to pitch 1,000 times a day, but when they do pitch, it has a lot of substance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was a great question, because it's funny, I actually had a very similar question not too long ago. In our senior projects class, I asked Warfield, who is one of our professors, I said, can you show us, the way to write, like as if we were in a writer's room, like how does that process work? And he basically said the same thing, like it's not necessarily one way. Like it depends on the room that you're in, it depends on the project that you're working on. And it's not, you know, as it could be structured, but it could also be structured differently in different rooms.
Right.
So that was like really good to know that there's not like one specific way to do it.
Yeah.
And that also kind of, to me, means that it also matters which room you're in and like where you fit. So I think that that's like really, really great advice. We do have another question from Malaysia who is in class, but she texts me. She said, how do you experiment with finding your voice or genre, whether it's comedy or drama, just as a writer in general?
Yeah, I feel like I'm still doing that a little bit. But I kind of watch a lot of Shonda Rhimes' masterclass on Masterclass. And she's just like pretty much saying, just kind of write down everything that you enjoy, your genres, and write down all the shows that you enjoy, and pretty much just dissect everything that you're drawn to and what you like and what shows and what writers. And then from there, you kind of figure out what you like to do. Like for me, I love like The Shy, I love Insecure, and I love This Is Us, and I love the dramas, and I also like the comedies. So I kind of feel myself writing more dramedies and just combining them, and more character driven stories. And I just kind of look at my life as well. And I'm just like, okay, what are the types of people that I attract to? Or what are the type of people who I'm always around? And then I feel myself including those characters in my story. I always go based off like what's dear and close to me. And I think that's kind of how you find your voice. And you kind of find your voice by looking at other people's work, and then also not just looking at things that you like, but things that you don't like, and saying like, okay, I don't like this, I don't like this, I would never write this, da, 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 da. And I think once you kind of figure out exactly what you do and do not like, you'll kind of also like naturally find the genre that you want to be in as well.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense.
Also, hi, Professor Mellinger. But how you doing?
Hey, Katia, what's going on?
I'm good. It's good to hear your voice.
Hey, man, it's good to see you. Thanks for dropping in. My students are great. They're vibrant. They're active. You know, it's kind of nice to have a group of students like this who you just stay out of the way and they do their thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's good to see you. I'll see you next time I'm in LA. You know, I haven't been on a plane in a while, but as you know, typically I go back 7-8 times a year, but I've had to leave my mom out there on her own. And I've got tenants that owe me money out there. So I'll be flying in sooner or later.
Yeah, get your money.
Good to see you, Katia.
So funny.
We'll be in touch. All right, thank you again.
Of course.
Yes, thank you, Professor. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying I learned a ton from Professor Mellinger, and that's kind of how I kind of got started into filmmaking, because I took a documentary class and I learned a lot. And then that's when I was really introduced to a lot of other students in Swan, and I'm still connected with them. Like to this day, like Kamani was in my class, and he's also yeah. So like it started with Professor Mellinger, so I really appreciate that.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So that actually brings me to another question. What advice, you mentioned the unpaid internship phase that you had. What advice do you have in regards to staying afloat, especially in a city like LA or New York, one of the bigger cities, in this industry when you're developing and building that rapport, you know, that reputation?
Yeah, so I would say you definitely have to stay afloat. You definitely have to make sure that you're taken care of. Now, sometimes you may have to do things or take jobs that you don't want to, that you're not interested in. But sometimes you just have to do that. I think I mentioned earlier, like I was a receptionist and I did not want to do that. But the reason that I kind of took that job is because it allowed me to write while I was on the job. Like I pretty much would do like answer the phones, but it wasn't a lot of phone calls. It wasn't a ton. I was just kind of there to monitor things. In the meantime, I had a big computer in front of me and I would just write my scripts. So also take a job that's going to allow you to continue to work on your projects, or just do something that's going to kind of require the least amount of work, but also give you the time to do what you really want to do. And then eventually, you know, you'll find something where you can actually do it as a job. So I think when I was a receptionist, I was writing scripts and then reaching out to a ton of people through Instagram and whatnot. Try to find something that's gonna allow you to do what you want to do, but not require a lot of time sometimes. But sometimes it doesn't work out like that. Sometimes you're gonna have to take a development position or assistant position and at an agency, and that is a lot of work. So do know that at an agent, if you're going to an agency, you're not gonna have time to write your own stuff. So just know that going forward. So it may be good to take a receptionist job, but also make sure you're taking jobs that's in the industry if you can. If you can't, that's fine, but it'd be better, like even if it's not in writing, if it's in editing or a post house or for sound or anything, as long as it's in the entertainment industry, you will network with people. You will also learn more about outside of, you know, just writing. So I would say the best thing to do is to find something in the industry, but also give you time to write and prepare your own scripts.
Cool. Wonderful. Does anybody have any other questions for Katia?
I do. I wanted to know, how has this job affected your personal life?
Really hasn't affected that much. I would say, well, I will say this, being that this job is remote, I don't have to be in LA, and I happen to be when I was in LA, I was in a long distance relationship. But now that I'm not in LA, I'm in Florida with my boyfriend. And so that's been a good plus. Now I had to be long distance, so that worked out. But as far as like if I have time to be with my friends and stuff like that, yeah, I think I still have time. And well, I'm definitely talking before COVID now, but can't do anything anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think the jobs, they can be grueling. I will say that they can be grueling, but I think you can always make time to, you know, decompress. The weekends were always my woosah time, like, whew, okay, let me just contain it. But, you know, I still had time to reach out to my friends and hang out or whatever that could be before COVID, whatnot. But yeah, I don't think it's been a huge difference.
That's great. I love that. I also have another question. I wanted to know, how has this experience, if you believe it has, helped you grow or improve in a way since you've entered this industry?
Yeah, good question. I really feel like I've matured, because in the beginning, you know, you're kind of green, you're new to the industry, and you just don't know sometimes, like, okay, when should I talk? Should I do this? And I would kind of second guess myself in the very beginning. And I was a little like, it's kind of meek a little bit. And as I did more jobs, I'm just like, you know what? You know, you're not going to get anywhere if you're not going to, you know, search yourself and be, you know, I was always present and I always helped in any way that I could. But you got to speak up and you have to be confident, and that kind of has to ooze off of you. And I think that takes time to develop, especially if you're in a new position and you're just trying to figure things out. But I feel like as I've developed, and taken more jobs, I've grown into a more confident person. I think I've always been confident, but even when you don't know something, still like fake it till you make it. Like still like, okay, yes, have an assertiveness in your voice and this and that. So yeah, that's how I've definitely developed and changed over time. Because I think at the beginning I'd just be like, so do you want me to do this? Like that. But now I'm just like, okay, so let me know if you want me to do this and da-da-da. It's all about just showing that confidence. And like I said, it does, happen over time, but that's kind of how I've matured mostly.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I was going to say, don't forget that Katia was one of Morgan's stellar athletes during her time at the school. She's a championship tennis player. And that dedication to tennis and that discipline crosses over into whatever she'll do for the rest of her life, of course. But she's a very disciplined person, and she wasn't afraid to hang it out there. And there were a lot of currents that were telling her to push it in other directions, but she persevered. And I give her all the credit in the world for that. And you guys all have that side of you that translates into the strength you need to move forward, as did Katia. And you all have youth on your side.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Very true.
Yeah, it's super true.
Thank you guys, Underground. You guys are awesome. Bye.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Yes, and we love to hear the wins. Love that. Love to hear the progression. That's some exciting news. Great. Does anybody have any last questions? Just to wrap it up.
Yes. I wanted to ask, did you move to LA before you had a job or after?
It was after. Yes. Okay. It was after. And I was kind of fortunate because my aunt lived in LA, so I didn't really have to really worry about like the insane rent prices. It's very, very expensive to live in LA. It's kind of ridiculous. So I would say kind of know like what you're gonna do before you go out there. But I also know people who just kind of went out there and they figured it out. But I think that grind is a little bit harder opposed to just knowing what you're gonna do, because I think you can, especially now with everything being on Zoom, you can kind of position yourself and get a job before you go out there. So it is tough sometimes, and I didn't have a car, and so I took the bus everywhere, and I would be on the bus for like 2.5 hours. So it's kind of a grind. It is, but I think if you situate yourself properly, then you can just kind of do that, figure it out as you go. But as far as the job, me personally, I think you should get your job first before you go out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just
Awesome.
asking, the last event Underground had, the woman said that she moved before she had a job. And so I just want to ask everybody just to see what they say. But
yeah, it's different. Some people, and I know tons of people who went out there before they had a job and they're doing like amazing now. So it just depends on your preference. But like I said, I would make sure I had a little bit of cushion before I went out there.
Yeah, I'm a planner.
You're welcome.
Great. So I'm going to finish it out with this last question. What advice would you give us as young professionals? Maybe something that you wish you would have known beforehand, or things that we should be doing now to maybe set ourselves apart or launch us forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like the things that I wish I would have known were it's really crazy. It's kind of things I wish I would have known about myself. Like I wish I would have known how I would have reacted in certain situations. And again, I think that all kind of deals with confidence and just, I wish I would have known that it was okay not to know everything. Because I would be like really hard on myself sometimes. I'm just like, oh, I don't know. And kind of just like, what am I going to do? It's just like, you don't need to panic. It's fine. Like you can just kind of figure it out as you go. And my current boss, she always just says, it's just TV. You don't need to stress yourself out. And it is a very stressful business sometimes, but it's just like, I wish I would have known you could take a deep breath. And you really are working really hard to get to where you want to go to, but make sure that you enjoy yourself and be present and in the moment. And I think sometimes, it sounds like it's a really simple concept and it's easy, but it's not sometimes. You just get so wrapped up in what you're doing. And then you kind of have to be your own cheerleader. Sometimes you're not going to get that pat on your back. And there have been many times where I've kind of wanted the validation, where I wanted people to say, okay, you're doing a good job. And I didn't. And it's just like, well, am I not doing a good job? If you're doing a good job. And I think validation from your boss or anybody, it's good for sure. But you kind of have to be your own cheerleader. And that's things that I wish I would have known back then. But luckily, like I said, your support team, once you are talking to them and letting them know what you do, they will be that for you if you feel like you can't be that for yourself at that moment. So just know, like, you're not always going to be highlighted for your work and your efforts, and you're going to put tons of commitment and effort out there, and it'd be like, okay, all right, see you tomorrow. But still, pat yourself on the back, be your own cheerleader. So those are things that I wish I would have known about that part. I think there's something else. Let me think really quick. I think also, as far as pay, you don't really get that much sometimes, but there have been a lot of times where people were just like, yeah, you get paid like pennies or whatever. But I didn't know, like, it's not really, it's doable. I didn't know, like, depending, you're there for so many hours and you get overtime, you get different things like that. So I was like kind of expecting to get paid like terribly. And I'm not saying it's amazing or anything. Like, I think you should know, like, PAs, the average is probably around 800 to like 900, sometimes even 1,000 a week. So around that range. And know, like, you can kind of negotiate. I didn't know this, but you can kind of negotiate and say, like, is there, you have to be very careful about how you word this, but you can say something like, is there more in the budget for this or something? You have to kind of think it out, but you don't always have to take the first deal. And I did not know that. There are jobs that I wish I would have negotiated more. But just because you're in a lower level position doesn't mean that you can't negotiate, because you can. And I wish I would have known that. But as far as like script coordinators, depending in animation, they make less money than, most of the times they make less money than live action. So in animation, like script coordinators in different positions, you're in like the 800 to 1,000 range. So it's kind of similar to the PA. So you're kind of getting paid the same. All the PAs, the writer's assistant, script coordinators, it may be like a few dollars difference, but that's kind of the money range that you're looking at.
That's awesome. I think that advice is so valuable, and that's the side of it that we don't always know until we get there. So it's nice that we're really grateful that you're here, giving us the tea, dropping some gems. But yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Katia, for speaking with us today. You don't even realize how amazing this has been for us. We literally, you know, times are hard, and so it's nice to have some encouragement and some knowledge before walking out into the world, once it opens back up safely. You know, before walking out there, and it's nice to have the certain information so that we can, you know, have something to back us up when we're out there. So we're really, really grateful. And we'd love to have you back at some point. We can discuss that. Yes, yes, love it. So excited. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to say?
I'm sorry I can't be here physically. As like Shawnee said, I was in class. But yeah, just thank you again, for being so open to doing this. I know, you know, so many people, like, just kind of repeating, but just so many people appreciate it, and for being so open. And yeah, just thank you.
You're welcome. And feel free to email me. I actually put that in the chat. Reach out to me if you have any questions. I would be happy to talk or to message, to answer anything that you may have. Just hold on, put it in the chat now.
I wanted to tell you that before we post this video, I will send it to you.
Okay.
For NDA or anything like that.
Okay.
Also, thank you again, because this was like a very insightful event, and I learned so much within such little time. I'm so glad we had you come speak to us.
Thank you. And you guys, like Professor Mellinger said, are doing amazing. And I can already see that you're definitely on the right path. It's kind of all about curiosity and to inquire about things and hearing other people's journeys. And that will definitely help so you can solidify your own path. So you guys are definitely on the right path. And to do all of this during COVID, I'm just like, go off. Because it's a lot. So I really commend you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. But thank you everyone else for coming out and dedicating your morning to Underground Studios event with Katia Jordan. This has been amazing, you guys. And yes, we'll see you guys at the next event. And thank you again. We can't thank you enough, Katia.
You're welcome.
In the chat, we have our Instagram and Katia's email.
Okay.
So y'all can look at that before y'all go.